It's not just, can I get through something? We can all get through something, but it's who are we on the other side of what we get through? And is the person on the other side stronger, better than they were when they first went through the adversity? That is the ultimate goal of resilience.
I am Gloria Grace Rand, founder of the L.O.V.E Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically, so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage. Namaste. If you thought you already knew how to succeed in business and life, listen up, because our guest is about to share the secret sauce that doesn't involve confidence or even your skill set. Intrigued? I hope so. But first, I want to welcome you to Live, Love, Engage, especially if this is your first time tuning in. I am Gloria Grace, founder of Align to Shine Academy, and I work with spiritually minded women entrepreneurs to break free from self-doubt and step into their highest potential. And joining us in just a moment is Tara Geraghty. She is a resilience expert, certified mindset and confidence life coach who empowers others to turn adversity into opportunity. A survivor and advocate, she shares 26 plus years of leadership experience through her TEDx talks, best-selling book, and global community, Hey Girl, You Can. And she inspires confidence and lasting success through that organization. And I think that's actually, well, I know we connected on LinkedIn, but I've also been involved in that community. So it's pretty cool. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her up here and welcome you officially, Tara, to Live, Love, Engage.
Yay. I'm so excited to spend this time with you.
Oh, me too. And I know that the topic we're talking about today, now to let you in on the secret here, is about resilience. And I know that you have said resilience is actually more important than confidence, skill, or a positive attitude. So I'd love to know why you think that. It sounds interesting, but yeah, explain.
And I will say that for a long time. So when I was young and I started my first business, I thought it was skill. I thought skill is if you just learn, then you'll be successful. And then after working with hundreds of women, I realized that it really wasn't skill. It was their confidence, because I could see someone come in who maybe didn't have the highest skill set, but they were super confident and they would be successful. So then for a very long time, I thought, well, it's confidence. And I do think that confidence counts. I think confidence is important. But then as my daughter has gotten older, so I'm a single parent. I have raised my daughter on my own. She's now off in college, and my daughter's an only child. I'm her only parent. Her cousins are much younger than her. She doesn't really have that nuclear support system around her. And I think as I get older and she gets older, I'm not always going to be here. Right. And what is the most important skill set I want to pass on to my daughter that I would feel when I leave this planet, she will be okay. And as I've really thought that through and looked at the last few years and watched as she's gone to college and the experience that the other kids are having, it really came down to resilience. If I could only give her one thing that would make her successful in life, it's resilience. And it really trumps confidence, skill, and everything else. And here's why. Because by definition, resilience simply means it's the ability that if you get knocked down, you can pick yourself back up. It literally means to spring back, to spring forward. So I always picture, you'll tell my age now. Do you remember, if my hair didn't tell you already, but the age that, do you remember those clowns? They were weighted at the bottom and you blew them up and they were like the punching bag.
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
You would punch them back, but because they were weighted on the bottom, they would just spring back up. It didn't matter how many times you punched him. It didn't matter how hard you punched him. You could not keep this clown down. It was going to come back up, right? That is how I think about resilience. It's not that you don't get knocked down. Sometimes life knocks you down, right? It's
Mhm.
that, can you get yourself back up? And think about it. If you don't have that ability, it doesn't matter how confident you are. You could be confident you're just lying on the ground, right? You can have as many skills, but if the skill is not how to get back up. And I think, wow, life is, sometimes people use that question, why me? Why do things happen to me? I went through a domestic violence divorce the same year my daughter was 3, and she had stage 4 cancer. And you would think that would be a good season to ask, why me? I never ask that question. I think it's a narcissistic question because it implies that somehow I'm special and I should get through life unscathed, but the rest of you fools, well, you should have problems, right? It's not a helpful question. And so we know that everybody, if you're living life, you're going to get knocked down at some point. And it could be something like a devastating job loss. It could be a divorce. It could be a devastating diagnosis for you, or in my case, for my child. It could be something that happens in the world. I mean, we just went through this, right, a few years ago. If we do not know how to pick ourselves back up, it is like you are at the mercy of life. And that is scary. When you know you can pick yourself back up, when you know you are resilient, when you know that, hey, even if I get knocked down, I can come back, and I will come back better. I will take what I learned in that ditch. I will take what I learned when I got knocked down, and boy, I'm going to spring back and I'm going to spring forward. You become the most powerful person you know. And I think that that will extend in every area of your life, because you're going to be more likely to say yes to an opportunity. You're going to be more likely to go for your dreams. You're going to be more likely to step out of your comfort zone, because you're not going to be afraid. Well, what if I fail? What if I got knocked down? What if it doesn't work out? What if I don't know how to pick myself back up? You'll say yes to those incredible things, because in the back of your mind, you go, well, if I get knocked down, if I fail, if it doesn't work out, I can pick myself back up. I know how to do that, right? And it's
Absolutely.
wild to me that the more I've talked about this and the more I've gone down this rabbit hole of resilience, I go, yes, this is so important, but we're not teaching this in school. We're
No.
not teaching this in college. There's no class on how do I become the mentally strongest person I know, right?
Right.
And I'm like, this is a life skill we all need. And for sure, if we didn't believe that, the last few years with what's happened in the world has taught people we need resilience.
Mm. Well, that brings me to my next question then, is for someone listening out there, especially women entrepreneurs in particular, how can they start to cultivate resilience for themselves?
Yeah, you're not going to like this answer.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about it. Resilience is a muscle.
Mm,
Okay. So you have a resilience muscle. And how do you build a muscle? Well, the way you build a muscle is you go to the gym, you work it out to the point that it actually tears, you're tearing the fibers, right? You're
yeah.
breaking down the fibers, you're causing a little bit of, quote, trauma, and then the muscle rebuilds itself stronger. That is how you develop muscles. You have to kind of work them, hurt them, and that's why they talk about that good pain, that
Right.
exercise pain. And then they grow back stronger. And then they grow back stronger. And you keep kind of putting them through a little bit of pain to grow back stronger. The only way we become resilient is to go through a little bit of pain. The only way we become resilient is to get knocked down and to practice getting back up and to proving to yourself that you can do that. So as a woman in business, that might mean, and I don't want somebody to get knocked down. It would be like, you don't want to go to the gym and work out so hard that cause massive damage to your body, right? There's a reason why you work with a trainer and you work up and you get stronger over time. So what is that? How does that translate to business? You start with a small step out of your comfort zone, a small step into doing something that you've never done before that feels a little scary, not one that's going to risk your entire business, but it's a little scary step that maybe you've been afraid to take. And you go in with the attitude that whether I succeed or whether I fail, I am doing this to learn. This is all going to be valuable information. And if I fall down, I will figure out how to pick myself back up. And so you slowly start to step out of that comfort zone. You slowly start to take those risks. And as you take risks, and some of them will work out well and some of them won't. That's just part of it, right? That's how it is in business. business is just some things work well and some things don't. There's that 80-20 rule we cannot get away from, right? And so you kind of go, when you hit the 80% that didn't work, you go, okay, well, that was great. But the powerful part is that then when opportunities come along that seem like bigger risks or bigger steps out of your comfort zone, which also then have bigger payoffs, you're willing to take them. You're willing to say yes to them because you've picked yourself up on the small falls. And so there's a trust and a confidence in yourself that goes, I'm resilient enough that if I take this big risk and it doesn't work out, I'll still be okay.
Yeah, I like that because it really is so important to step out of your comfort zone. You have to be able to do it. Otherwise, you're never going to grow. But the importance of doing, I like that, the baby steps. Try something that you don't have, that's not too overwhelmingly scary, because you're never going to be able to manage with that. But something that's a little bit, like, as an example, what I did, and this was a couple of years ago, I had the idea to do a retreat, and it just kind of came to me in the afternoon. And I was like, rather than going to, all the trouble of like building a landing page and everything, first thing I said, well, let me just see if anybody would be interested in doing it. And so I just sent out an email to see, and I got some positive feedback. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I could actually do this. And this was the first time I'd ever run a retreat. So it's doing those little things. And I hope everybody's listening to that. It's just take those little baby steps. Like you said, I think that's so important.
I love that. And, somebody might go, oh, well, it was just an email. But if you think about it, it was a risk. It was, what if I send this email out, nobody responds?
Yeah.
Or what if people email me back? That's dumb. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, it could have been.
Right. There's that little risk. And so I think that's great. I love that. It is. It's thinking about what opportunities have you missed out on because you've been afraid.
Yeah.
What opportunities have you not gone for because it's felt a little scary? And it could be even something as simple as, I've always wanted to start my own podcast. I've always wanted to write a book. I've always thought about becoming a coach. I've always thought about, doing an online business, but how would I do that? How would that work out? And sometimes it's just taking that first step, and knowing that a lot of times we think we're walking in one direction and God, life has a different direction for us. But if you don't get on the path, you're not going anywhere, right? So sometimes you just got to start walking, and life will start to redirect your path if you're in the wrong direction, right? But standing still, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So when did you realize that, resilience was going to be such a big part of your life, and your mission in life?
So I think that it's interesting because I talk with a lot of parents about resiliency in kids. I think that and I'm guilty of this. My daughter's had a rough childhood. By the time she was 4 years old, she had gone through domestic violence and childhood cancer. I mean, that's a lot, right? And we have this desire to protect our children so much. And a few years ago, I ended up speaking at a conference. I was a keynote for a conference on teen suicide, the prevention of teen suicide. And I remember saying to the organizers, while I'm totally flattered you want me to be your keynote, I don't think I'm the appropriate person for this because I don't have any personal, background, interest, affiliation with teen suicide. And I learned, and they said, no, we heard you speak somewhere else. We want you. But I had to get a crash course and in learning about it. And what shocked me was finding out that resiliency is tied into teen suicide, right? Like if a child is resilient, if a child can but that children who have upper to middle class, wealthier families are at a higher risk of suicide. I found this fascinating. And I was like, I don't understand. And so they explained to me, well, if you have a kid who, let's say they leave their lunch at home, or they leave their flute at home, and they have a music practice, and their mom is at home because they live in an upper middle class family. Mom's at home. She's a stay-at-home mom, or mom has flexibility that she can go. She's going to go home, get their lunch. She's going to drop off the instrument. She's going to take care of the situation, or dad, or whoever.
Right.
But if you have a kid who comes from kind of a lower income family where maybe mom had to take 3 buses to get to work, the kid gets home and there is no food and they have to figure out how to make dinner because they've got a parent who's maybe an alcoholic or on drugs, passed out on the couch, and they have to really kind of fend for themselves. They build up this resiliency. They build up these life skills that then when life gets hard as an adult, they can cope, where the other kid who had been coddled and taken care of and was always, they can't cope. And so that's probably when I first started thinking about this resiliency. And I realized that, I started a business at a young age. I was 20 years old, and I learned a lot of resiliency in that, because in business, and if you have a business, there's a lot of rejection. You get more no's than you get yeses in any business, right? Because business is numbers. And so that's when I think I first really started to build up this kind of mental strength of dealing with rejection and no's and understanding numbers and all of that. Then when I went through my domestic violence divorce, it was probably the most horrific season of my life. And I did not build resiliency on purpose. I was forced to. When you're in a situation where somebody is stalking you and actively telling people they're going to kill you, that will challenge you in a mental way that I had never been challenged before. And I do remember a moment standing in my living room. I had been living in fear for a year of windows locked and walking over my shoulder and just in constant fear. And it was real fear. I mean, it wasn't made up fear. It was a real reason to be a fear. But I remember standing in my living room one day and I just made a choice. I drew a line in the sand and I said, this is it. I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I cannot continue to live like this and give my power away and let this person terrorize me. And I have already given this person 7 years of my life in this, horrific marriage. I am not going to give them one more day. And whether that means that I live 2 more weeks and they kill me, or, 20 years, they don't get one more day of my life. Now, that didn't mean that I threw out my safety plans and just went wild. I still, kept the safety plans and everything, but it was this mental decision to not let somebody else own my power. And I think there were decisions like this along the way in my life that started to add up, and then with my daughter getting her cancer diagnosis and being like, this is a completely out of control situation. Wow. But I can choose mentally how we're going to show up. My book is Making Cancer Fun, because it was like, how can we deal with this? And what do I have control over? And I think part of resiliency is feeling powerful. It's feeling like I can choose how I want to respond to situations. I'm not in constant reaction to what everybody else is doing, to what life is doing, people are doing, business is doing. I'm choosing how I want to respond. And when you can start to show up like that, you become more resilient, because you feel like it's that, you control what you can control type thing. And then there's also a level where you go, I really can't control anything except me, right? There's nothing I can control except me. I can control me. But that's where that resilience piece is born, that you start to trust yourself more. You start to trust that you will figure it out. You start to trust that if you don't know how to figure out, you will figure out how to find the people who can help you figure it out, right? And I think as I went through these really tough things, you have to get hurt. You have to fall down. You have to, I remember I felt like, and I talk about this in my book, I felt like I had the rug pulled out from underneath me during my domestic violence divorce. I felt like this is it. The rug was pulled out from me. And literally, a few months later, I get this diagnosis that my daughter's going to die of cancer. And I was like, oh, here I was sitting on the floor. Nope. That was just a trap door I was on. And now we're going further down, and my daughter's, going to be 19 soon. And she's my miracle kid. But when you are put through those fires, it's kind of like that story about how our diamond is made, right? It's fire. It's, you have to go through tough stuff to prove to yourself that you're tough. And so I hope that nobody here has to go through super, super tough stuff. But I think as business owners, you can put yourself through a little tough thing, a little thing to kind of go, wow, I can do this. Okay, I survived. If I can survive this, I can survive something else. And then I will say for sure the pandemic really shed a light to me on how few people were resilient. And I really could see firsthand how parents were responding to the pandemic and how that was affecting how their children were responding, right? I saw this within the business owners that I coach. It was like, okay, this is a crisis and I'm going to fall apart, or I'm going to pivot. Okay. For me, I had a business that was all based on in person, and I had never done a Zoom in my life. And then the pandemic hit and we had to go on Zoom. And I
Yeah.
was like, Gloria, I would get anxiety over a screen share. I mean,
Oh,
I
no.
really like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this tech. I am not
Yeah.
I was totally overwhelmed. But again, if you're like, I'll figure it out, I can figure
Mhm.
it out. Somebody can teach me. I can learn. I mean, you know, and
Yep.
and my gosh, we live in a world now where with the access to YouTube, you can basically learn how to do everything,
I
right?
know. Yes.
You
Yeah.
are stronger than you think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a dear friend who kind of went through the same thing. She was hosting these wise women circles in her home every month. And when the pandemic hit, she's like, "Oh, Gloria, I guess we won't be able to do it." And I'm like, "But I love those. Can't we do them online? I'll help." And so I became her tech goddess. And so I would, I would created the Zoom so that and now actually she can create Zooms on her own now. She has learned how to do it herself.
I love
And
that.
that's what we have to do. And I love that. And I guess, in now, and I we've met before, I know a little bit about you, but really in hearing this story, I definitely understand why you're are the founder of Hey Girl You Can. That name
Yeah.
makes so much more sense to me. I know we've been talking a lot about resilience, but tell me a little bit about, we may come back to it, but I want to just dive in a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this community and what is it about and why did you start it?
Yeah, well, it's by accident. I know that's a really strange answer to most people when they ask me. So, I had written a book called Making Cancer Fun. That's what my TED text was about, and started to work with parents who had children going through a massive life changing medical diagnosis. And then the pandemic hit. And so that kind of medical, as you know, the medical world at that point went a little bit crazy. And my sister-in-law said to me, "There's this new app. You should check it out. It's called Clubhouse." I was like, I don't know. It was a social audio app. It was really the first one. And so I went on the app thinking this will be a great way to connect with parents who could use, my resources, my tools, my education, things like that. Well, again, this is the resiliency piece here. I'm thinking I'm going one direction. I'm going to go find these parents. They were not on the app. Those parents were not there, right? Instead, because I started to walk the journey, life redirected me, excuse me, and said, "Okay, well, there's this ton of women on the app. What do you know?" And I said, "Well, I know women in business. I've been coaching women in business for, at that point, over 20 years." I said, "So that's what I know." So I ended up creating a community on the app that just exploded. And really, I remember I was sitting there one night. My sister-in-law said, "You need a name for it." I said, "I don't know." And all of a sudden I thought, well, I like this name. Hey Girl You Can. She actually told me it was a bad name, but I said, well, I like it. So I'm just going to stick with it. It was just one of those energy things, right? And
Mhm.
it's been interesting because people who would find our community would say, "Oh, I just loved the name." But I really liked this idea of like, you can, because I think so often, and maybe it's just maybe more for women or whatnot, but we're kind of told we can't.
Yeah,
And I don't believe that. I really
right.
believe that, and I truly believe that if you have a dream in your heart, if you have this vision of something you want to create, do, experience, that God would not give you that vision, would not give you that dream if you didn't also have the ability to achieve it. Like we would have the most cruel, evil God who would say, "I'm going to give you this dream, but I know you can never have it. I'm just going to torture it with you your whole life." Like that would be horrific, right? That would not be. And so I believe that if it's there, if there's even just this spark there, it's because you do have the ability to achieve it. You do have the ability to go for it. You just need to be in a community with people who are telling you you can. And this is what I loved your story, Gloria, about your friend with her wisdom circles. Like, oh, I love that because imagine if she had been doing these wisdom circles in her home and the pandemic hits and she just thinks, "Oh, well, I can't do this anymore." And imagine if she hadn't been in community with you, if you hadn't been in her sphere of influence, she might have just stopped there. But
Yeah.
when you surround yourself with the right people,
Mhm.
people who are big thinkers, who are going to cheer you on and who are going to say, "Hey girl, you can." And that's exactly what you did for her. You said, "You can, we will figure this out. We will figure this out together." Like who you put in your corner and your community is so
Mhm.
important. Science tells us that with mirror neurons, your
Mhm.
brain will rewire to be like the people you're around. So be careful who you're hanging out with, right?
True.
But
Yes.
it changes your life. In this case, look with her, it could change your destiny just by
Mhm.
hanging out with. And so having our community showing up in a community, investing in a community, finding like-minded people, whether it's Hey Girl You Can or whatever community you find, I think is so vital for someone's success in life and in business.
Absolutely. And that's one of the great lessons from the pandemic, I think, is that it really reinforced this need for human connection because we were so isolated for so long. And yes, Zoom was great, but there's just something about in-person connection. And I know you've had the online community, and which is good too, but when you can, if you can do both, that's, I think, the best of both worlds. When you can, connect with people from all over the world or all over the country or something online, that's fabulous. But then when you can also meet with people in person, because there's just something about getting a hug from somebody. It's just, it's so great.
And women, I believe, are meant to live in community. Like, if you think about it, we raised our children in tribes and villages together. Like, more than men, we are collaborative by our biological makeup in nature. And so if there's a study they did recently about women over 35 are lonelier than ever. And this doesn't surprise me, because in this world where we think we're so connected by social media, we're not. We're not having those genuine, real relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's why I have my own group as well. And we have been meeting online, and once a quarter we would meet in person, but I've decided to just go for it, at least for the rest of this year, and try just meeting in person
I love that.
every month instead, because it's been a small group that meets online anyway. And so it's like, well, we might as well just meet in person, because when we do meet in person, we get more people. So it's like,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
Well,
so that's telling me something.
Yeah. And I think that that's vital information. And again, this goes back to the resiliency, right? It's like saying, okay, I'm going to try this and see. If Gloria, if wasn't resilient, she'd be like, well, I don't want to take that step. What if it doesn't work out? But when you're like, okay, I'm willing to try it. I think, Hey Girl You Can, because we started on a social audio app and it was global. Our community was so big.
Yeah.
So we've had a better we've had better attendance in things that are virtual. With that being said, is we have done in-person events. I have one coming up this month because I'm in New Jersey.
Nice.
And so I do think there is an energy that you get in person with people. And I think you can't entirely replace that online.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go back. Well, we haven't really left the talk about resilience, but I want to ask you, is there maybe a misconception, a common misconception about resilience that you either encounter in your coaching practice, or maybe that you just completely disagree with?
So I think there's a few things. I think it's not just, and this has been a newer thought process that I've been kind of processing. It's not just about, can I get back up? Resilience isn't just, can I weather the storm? Can I survive through it? Can I get to the other side? It's, can I get there and be in a better place than I was before the storm hit? Can this storm actually be the building blocks for me to step into my best? Kind of what you had said in the beginning. I wrote this down. I loved how you said this: adversity into opportunity. It's not just, can I get through something? We can all get through something, but it's who are we on the other side of what we get through? And is the person on the other side stronger, better than they were when they first went through the adversity? That is the ultimate goal of resilience. And I believe what it does is it refines us into the best version of ourselves, into the version of ourselves that always was there. It's not a different, I'm not a different person than I was before I went through adversity. I'm the same person I was when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. It's just hopefully has brought out the strength that was already in me and has brought it to the surface more. So there's this stronger, best version of ourselves, right? It's taking, what did you learn from that? What were the key things that allowed you to grow? And how does that then allow you to really utilize your gifts, like what you're here for in the world? So it's not just the bouncing back. By definition, resilience is bouncing back. To me, it's bouncing back better. It's coming back in the better version. And then what happens is, when you view it that way, your resilience and the things that were your tough times actually start to be seen as a gift. These were the gifts that grew you into the best version of yourself. And so that also allows you to embrace the tough times a little bit different, because you start to see everything is a gift. And I know that that can really trigger or offend people to say my daughter's childhood cancer was a gift. Like, I would never want anybody to go through that. 48 families a day get a diagnosis in the United States that their child has cancer. It is, I think, one
Wow.
of the most devastating diagnoses that you can get.
Mhm.
It is horrific. And I pray that there's a day that that never happens, right?
Yeah.
What I can say is that while I would never want to go through that, I can see the gifts that came out of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing with my domestic violence divorce. We know 1 in 4 women is affected by domestic violence. I believe it's a silent epidemic in our country that people aren't talking about. It's pretty horrific if you think 1 out of 4, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, do I ever want someone to go through that? Absolutely not. It's absolutely devastating. And I will tell you, I still deal with the psychological, emotional, implications of with how that changed me. But I can see that there were gifts in that. I've had opportunities. I've been able to work on legislation. I've worked on getting some bills changed here in our state. I was on the State and Public Affairs Committee. I've gotten to speak at nonprofits, raise money. I just spoke at a gala, and they said that because of my keynote, they had raised an extra $100,000 for this nonprofit that they didn't anticipate. I mean, that to me was like, it gave me chills when I heard that I could use something that was so horrific in my life in a way now to say, you know what, you tried to break me with that, but I'm actually going to come back, and I'm coming back better. And now look at all the things I can do as a result of that. So I think that's where the resiliency piece, I think it's a little confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think that the point is that while you're going through things, yes, it can be very stressful, and you just do your best to get through it. But once you get to the other side, that's when you can reflect on it, and hopefully you have grown and learned from it, and you are better on the other side, that then you can even be, dare I say, grateful for that opportunity, or to have to go through it, because it's painful, but if it does serve you, if it serves the greater good, then it is something that you can say, okay, that really sucked, but I'm so glad that I survived and thrived. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and I like that it's not the surviving, it is the thriving. That's kind of the
Yeah.
key of all of it, right? And here's the thing, let's be really clear, particularly if we have somebody listening right now who's in the fire.
Yeah.
You are not going to be in the fire burning, being like, what's the gift in this? I mean, that is not the place to be asking that question. That is the
Absolutely.
place to be in survival, in how do I get out of this?
Mhm.
When I was in the middle of my ex-husband stalking, I wasn't going, I wonder how this will be used for good in the end,
Yeah.
right? Like, I just want to be really clear on that, because that could be a very interpreted thing.
Mhm.
You are in a place where you just need to get out of the fire.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's okay. It is okay for life to stop, to give yourself grace, to not be
Mhm.
at your best, to not be thriving, and say, I just have to get out of the fire right now. I am in survival mode. And there will be seasons, unfortunately, that sometimes we are in survival mode. What happens is when you get out of the fire, now you're in a position to take buckets of water and go back and put it on the people who are still in the fire, and
Mhm.
hopefully use whatever you learned in a way that is going to help other people. you
Yeah.
know and there's all those sayings around it, right? Let your
Mhm.
mess be your message, let your pain be your pulpit. Like, there's all those great little key phrases, but
Right.
there's truth in that,
Yeah.
that we go through these things and they are part of our journey. And it's being able to step back and say, why? And how, not even why, but not like, why did this happen to me? We talked about that's not useful, but why did this happen in a way that, how can I use this? How can I benefit? What was the lesson I needed to learn? How can I grow from this? And there may be times openly that the lesson doesn't need to be a pulpit. Like, people have said you should write a book about what happened with your divorce. I am like, I am not reliving that. That was the most horrific thing. I don't need to go through that again. That needs to be a chapter that's closed. If it's a way that I can help somebody, and speak at an event, that's great. But that is not going to be where I'm going to put energy for my own mental sanity. So there are times when you've gone through something really difficult, and it's okay to close the door to that. Everything doesn't need to become your life's purpose, right? um,
Mhm.
pick and choose what you want to take from that. So there are things from that season that I can pick and choose and say, this is what I've learned and I'm comfortable talking about. And there's other stuff that I say, nope, that's a door that needs to stay closed to protect myself. Like I don't do anything that works directly with victims, things like that, because that would not be good for me in my own healing. Right. So I do think you need
Yes.
to be able to know what's going to serve you, serve others, and what's not going to serve you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've kind of gone through the same thing. It's like I was in a coaching program for a while, and they kind of knew my story and suggested that I could work with other like children of alcoholics, because that's my dad was an alcoholic. And I looked at it and looked at it, and then I joined like some groups with people who are in the throes of it, and it was just, and even right now it's like my stomach already is just getting like, no, this is not what I want to do. That is a door that I closed, and I don't, I bless those people that they're having to go through it, but there's other people who can help them, and that's not my journey to do.
Well, and I think what you can say is, I'm sure that going through that and the strength that you've had to develop as a result and the lessons you've learned probably does serve you very well in your coaching, in your empathy for other people. And so I think you can take those things and say, that's what I'm going to take without, and that is, I loved what I heard you say too, you said, I feel it in my gut. And I think sometimes as women, we stop trusting our gut.
Yeah.
And I think this is our most powerful, intuitive, like when we can reconnect with that, we're unstoppable. I don't know where that happens. I don't know if that happens at a very young age, like where, we start telling little girls to do things that they don't want to do because they have to make other people happy, or we don't want to hurt people's feelings, like how often we're kind of told that. So I'm not sure if that's where it starts. I don't know if it starts maybe when we're older in high school and we're trying to, date, and you just want to be. And so how many of us have ended up in a situation where we dated someone where we go, well, that wasn't great. I probably should have trusted my gut a little bit more. Right. Or if it's because we're hearing other people or society, I don't know. Somebody else maybe is an expert in that and can tell us, where does that happen? But I see it over and over. Women who are getting older who are going, I'm finally going back to listening to my gut. I'm finally going back to trusting my intuition. And I'm like, why did all of us stop doing that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It is something that we definitely need to do more of. And that's one of the things that part of my program that I work on is helping women to start tuning into their higher selves, because that's where all the wisdom is. We have it all inside of us. And the wisdom sometimes is that we also have to look outside as well to get help. So, because sometimes that is what the inner wisdom is telling you, is that, okay, yes, you need to reach out to someone to get support, whether it is hiring a coach or seeing a therapist or whatever it is, because we can't always do everything ourselves. And so sometimes you do need to do that.
I think this is a very good point, because there's this idea of I should be able to figure it out on my own. And I remember when I first started my business and people would talk about working with a coach, and even the top people worked with a coach. And the example that was always given to me is Olympians have coaches. These are Olympians. They are the best of the best. Like Michael Phelps knows how to swim, right? He still has a coach. You never hit a level where you don't need that person pouring into you, mentoring you, because there's always people who can see, even when you're really good at what you do, there's people on the outside who can see things a little differently. And that's why, what you do and working with people and helping them get to that next stuck level is really important. I don't think there's any top people who don't have someone that they're, mentoring them or coaching them or working with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And it gets back to what we talked about at the beginning, the power of community. And that, because, and even sometimes if you can't find a coach, sometimes it's great to join a community or get involved in like a mastermind group, because when you bring a bunch of people together, there's a lot of collective wisdom there and that you can tap into. So
well, and that was one of the things with Hey Girl You Can, is I wanted a very low cost, anybody could get into the community. So maybe somebody who isn't quite ready or in a place where they can invest in high ticket coaching, they can, come into this kind of like mini membership that anybody can afford. It's like give up, it's like Starbucks, right? But have access to a community, have access to master classes and co-working and networking and Q&As and things like that. And for a long time, I really didn't know what to do with Hey Girl, You Can, because everybody kept kind of saying to me, oh, you should go into this high ticket coaching. And I think just, as a single mom and as somebody who, has kind of had to rebuild my life from the ground up, I was like, that just energetically, there was something that I just kept pushing against and couldn't figure out why. And then a friend of mine said, well, what about this new model of having this very inexpensive, low ticket, membership? And the more I started to learn about that, I went, yes, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want any woman who wants to find community, change her life, grow herself, grow her business, have access to it. And that's really when the membership was formed. So
very cool.
Yeah. And hopefully then that what we'll do is to give somebody some basic tools to then get into a place where they can work with someone like you, right?
Sure.
Like that's really where you want to funnel. You want to say, okay, what do I need to get to a point where I can have that one-on-one mentorship, where I can hire Gloria, where I can step into something bigger?
Yeah. That's absolutely the way it needs to work. And I so appreciate you pointing that out. Gosh, this has been amazing, and time is flying. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't? Any other last point you want to make before we close out today?
Well, I'll share with you two things. So one is, if you do want to build resilience, I know you're going to share my website. I do have a 5-day resiliency challenge. If you go, and basically what I do is I hop in your email for 5 days. Every day you're going to get email. I'm going to teach you one tool that develops resilience. So it's a 20-minute audio that you get every day, and I'm going to teach you one specific thing. And these are the tools that I used myself to get through these. So it's one specific thing, and I want to kind of build your toolbox up so that when things get rough, you've got something to go to and use and be able to do that. And then I always love to share my favorite quote anytime I speak somewhere. And this is my prayer and my blessing for you. It's my 𝘰𝘰𝘷𝘦. It actually hangs in my office. I see it every single day. It is what I try to live my life by. It says, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left, and I could say I used everything you gave me. And that is my prayer for anybody listening, because I believe that you have talents and gifts that are meant to bless the world. And if you don't go for it, your dreams die with you. And we need your dreams, because those are your gifts for the whole world and for all of us.
Wow. That is a great quote. And I haven't heard the name 𝘰𝘰𝘷𝘦 in a very long time, but I guess, yeah, she has wonderful wisdom. Google her, folks. I know, especially if you're younger, you're like, who? Trust me, Google it. She wrote books. It's great stuff. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been amazing. And I know our audience is going to, has received already a lot of value just from what you shared today. And I'm in awe of you even more than when I first met you, because you truly are the resilient gal. You've gone through a lot, and you're here shining and smiling and supporting other women. And that's so important.
Thank you.
Wow. And I do want to thank all of you for watching and listening today. And I truly do hope that you have received as much value as I did. And I encourage you, if you're not already a subscriber of the podcast, to please do so on your favorite podcast platform. You can also, if you like video, you can watch us on YouTube as well. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.